Greetings,
Welcome back again.
KJ and Swiley. We're back with another word of the day, but we have a special guest to introduce our word. Here she is.
I think now is the time for me to say salutations.
What?
Salutations.
Oh, okay. I'll leave.
No, Wilbur. Salutations is just a fancy way of saying hello.
Oh, hello.
Salutations.
Salutations.
Thank you, Charlotte. That was delightful in her lovely voice. Salutations. All right. A gesture or utterance made as a greeting or acknowledgement of another's arrival or departure. Salutations.
Oh, salutations.
Not one you hear very often anymore, and according to Urban Dictionary, salutations are fancy greetings very rarely used in today's world. Most people who say salutations are laughed at or made fun of, but it is still a really cool way to say hello. And they actually have their example
That's
there
very cool.
between Charlotte and Wilbur. Salutations, what? Very cute. Another definition here is a form of greeting used when hey, hi, or what's up just aren't good enough. Lovely.
Well, salutations to those people then.
Yeah. Yes. Okay, so I had a little look on the interweb, as we do, about the dynamic shift of the English language. And I was kind of looking to see, are we actually having a degradation of the use of the English language? And
I would think so. Even by that Urban Dictionary statement of saying, well, then when what's up is not good enough. Like,
I
or
don't
to
know.
laugh at someone for saying proper English words. Like,
Well,
come
the
on.
other half of that definition was still saying that it's a really cool way to say hello, and their example was Charlotte and Wilbur, so they obviously do appreciate it.
Yeah.
Perhaps they were made fun of before they wrote that definition, and it was a real life story.
Maybe it was an observation.
Maybe. I did have a little look further into that thought process of, are we looking at something actually breaking down? And I was interested in what I found. It's true what I was reading. Like, language is a dynamic entity, constantly evolving in response to societal, cultural, and technological shifts. I would agree with that. While some may perceive these changes as a decline in quality, linguistic experts, trust the experts, linguistic experts view them as natural processes of adaptation and innovation.
Well, for those linguistic experts, we'll just
Yes.
now call them talkie people.
The talkies.
The talkie people.
The talkies said that it's a natural process.
It's natural.
Well, I think it actually is. So there's a few little points here. Language is inherently dynamic. Languages evolve over time, adopting new words, altering pronunciations, and changing grammar structures. Driven by factors like contact with other languages, technological advancements, and cultural shifts. Modern English, for example, is a far cry from Old English, yet it's a functional and living language. I think that's true. It is. The second point they had there is that modernization doesn't imply decline. New words and phrases often emerge. Sorry, the dog is just demanding attention right now with a very aggressive tail wag. How can we help you? Modernization doesn't imply decline. New words and phrases often emerge to reflect the changing world, including technology and social trends. The use of slang or informal language in certain contexts doesn't mean that people have lost their ability to write or speak standard English. In fact, many individuals are proficient in multiple registers and modes of communication, adapting their language use to the situation.
I would agree. Yeah, that's true. You do adapt your language style to
Yep.
the people that you are addressing or the people that you're conversing with.
Yes.
But I don't think you need to dumb down yourself to fit into modern linguistics.
But is it
weird.
necessarily a dumbing down, or is it just actually shorthanding your communication by using those modern adaptations of the traditional words? The third point here is different perspectives on language change. Some people may view language change with a negative lens, such as you were just mentioning,
Yeah.
associating it with corruption or a decline in standards. However, the talkies, linguists, generally see these changes as natural and even beneficial, reflecting the language's ability to adapt and serve its purpose. For example, the development of texting and social media has led to new forms of communication, but it hasn't diminished the ability of English speakers to use formal language when necessary. I think that's quite true. And when I was first looking into this word of the day, salutations, I was viewing it from a negative perspective, I suppose, where it doesn't seem like the language is being used in the manner that it used to be. But that doesn't
But
necessarily
it's just
mean
like
that
anything.
it's...
If you don't use it, you lose it. And there's many
Yeah, I
many
guess.
words in the English language that we don't use anymore
Mm.
that have taken up a new way of saying it. I suppose that have just become extinct now. I mean, if you're looking at the King James, I mean, a lot of those words in there, a lot of people just would not understand, and well, it's easier to read
Well, would
the
they
new
not
version.
understand it, or is it simply that they prefer the modernized version? I'm not sure.
There's lots of words, even when you look at it, and they're old Hebrew words or Greek words and stuff like that. The English language has been adapted to include a lot of words, a lot of Arabic words as well.
Yeah.
And
There's
but
heaps of influence in there from various countries and their own native tongues. Loads of it. And that is where some of the slang and stuff comes from
my
still
personal
now
view is
today.
I do think we are degrading the language. I mean, if instead of saying "be right back" now, I'm saying "brb."
Which is the same amount of syllables.
Yeah.
So you could have just said "be right back."
Why not say it? Why not just use it?
I don't know. Sometimes
Yeah.
they sort of slip in because you use them as a joke thing. Like there's been plenty of phrases that
course,
we've
yeah,
come
yeah.
across that we've heard others use that we're like, that is ridiculous. And then you use it jokingly and it actually then becomes something that you say.
I mean, there's many beautiful words in the English language that we just don't use now, and they're more descriptive words than the words that we have currently. Like, I can't think of any that come to mind now, but
Because of the degradation of
yeah, that's
the
right.
English
Yeah, I'm slowly.
They're not in the
getting
forefront of
dumbed
your mind
down, you know?
anymore. But
I've
BRB
been
is
around.
it.
I've been around for a lot of years, and now I'm slowly getting dumber every day.
Right. Dear, oh dear. I would agree with the linguists that it is definitely morphing. You can see it happening around
it
you
does
when you
happen.
experience
And
it.
it's not new. It's been happening for
Of course, yeah.
since the beginning of the English language.
Yeah, so that sort of cynical approach that I had where it's like, oh, it's not as people aren't necessarily using the language in the way that they were before, but it doesn't mean that they don't still have the capacity to do it, and should they be required to, that they can, and they would. But there's just the preference of the day-to-day interactions.
But I suppose if you go
have
right back,
changed.
our great-great-grandparents would be saying to us, speak properly, like,
Yes.
because we don't do that anymore.
Yeah, because I suppose the societal approach to language at that time was to be much more formal in those kinds of settings, and we're a lot more laid back and how you going.
Or would you say laid back, or becoming rude and abrupt?
There's
Do we
probably
shorten
an
the
element of
language
that.
to just because we want to get our point across and that's all that matters?
Mm-hmm.
Or there's a lot of different ways to look at it, I
Yeah.
suppose. Yeah.
It's quite a
Very interesting
large
subject.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. But it's like the language itself seems to be its own living thing. It's like a thing that's moving and shaping, and everybody's individual use of it and approach to it and feelings about it will all be different, I suppose.
It's societal based. I mean,
Yeah.
it's always,
But also individually. Because it is your right to use the language how you choose. So if you want to use these more modern terms and you like the Urban Dictionary modifications of original definitions of things and you like to use them in that way, well, then that's your right to do that. Free speech, mate. Go nuts.
Yeah. And it's also the same right as to just withhold my ears from hearing it.
Yes. Anyway, salutations, as we know, are greetings. It's a form of a greeting for somebody's arrival or departure. So I had a little think about what are the ones I usually say for arrival, not departures so much, but the arrival ones. I want to answer my phone. I'll always say yellow when I answer my phone,
Yeah.
or g'day or ahoy ahoy.
How's it going?
Well, probably not. I don't really do that one when I answer the phone, but you got howdy as well and hello, hello, all sorts of things that still mean the same thing and are understood by, I guess, most that would hear them. But they're not the traditional greeting. It's certainly not as fancy as saying
What were your favourite ones
salutations.
again? Say them again.
Yellow
Yellow. Yep.
and ahoy ahoy and g'day. I use that all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think those words would be quite in the forefront of your mind because of the fact that they probably have some cultural recognition to it. Like g'day,
they would.
that was a whole Australian
Yep.
advert that was going on promoting tourism and promoting Australian culture as G'day Australia.
Yeah.
Ahoy.
Ahoy ahoy.
Can't think where that comes from.
Well, ahoy is actually the greeting that was first proposed to be used when answering the telephone, when the phone was being invented. It's like, how should we answer it? And ahoy was the suggested word that would be when you pick up the receiver
and
of
when
the
you look
cell
at that,
phone.
that did morph into hello instead. Yeah.
Yes, it became another greeting.
Yeah, I think one of them was probably from a movie or something like that.
Oh, maybe. Could be. So in that note of greetings, I also had a look at crossing boundaries of language barriers, right? So how do you communicate with people with what is your greeting when you don't necessarily know how to speak their language? And shaking hands is still the most common international form of greeting. It doesn't have a language barrier. And in pretty much every culture, if you extended your hand for a formal or informal meeting with somebody, that would be understood as a polite greeting. I did read though that in Japan they prefer a bow, but if you're not from Japan and the Japanese person does choose to initiate a handshake with you, you should take it and return it, but you're not meant to do like an Aussie man's handshake, which is like a proper how you going,
Strong
steady.
and firm.
Yeah. You wouldn't be doing that with a Japanese person if you were shaking their hand. Just a
Very interesting.
little fun fact for...
I'm sure there's some cultures I've heard that certain sexes aren't allowed to. You're not allowed to touch another.
Of like for handshaking and things like that. Yeah.
Things like that.
Yeah. I didn't look into that aspect of it. But yes, as we had Charlotte on earlier, that's also going to be the topic of our vintage culture appreciation for today. The lovely book Charlotte's Web. It's been around for a while now. Written by E.B. White in 1952 was Charlotte's Web.
Wow.
Beautiful story. Apparently it was actually based on his own experience from his own farm of watching his own animals interacting with one another, and a situation that he had that developed into this story, Charlotte's Web. Also read, fun fact, that Charlotte's full name that she announces in the book of Charlotte A. Cavatica is taken from the scientific name for a barn spider, which is, if I mispronounce it, which I will, Arienus cavaticus. So her surname was A. cavatica, which is very clever. I liked that. So, the beautiful novel, themes of friendship, sacrifice, and the power of words. If you haven't read it, please do. It is on some of the banned books list due to themes of death, frightening description of Charlotte the Spider. Some people say that it might be better suited to older audiences, despite the fact that it years ago was more of like a family story. And
I remember watching it as a kid, and it was always on at the prime time.
I think there was a film version of it that came out in the 70s, but the book was from the 50s, and there was another film in the early noughties that was filmed over here in Oz. But I really like that when Charlotte is speaking to Wilbur and when you're reading through the book, the words that are used they're not dumbed down. She uses the, let's say, fancier version of the word, such as salutations instead of hello, and then simply explains to Wilbur what it means, so that the child reading the book is gaining knowledge while they're reading it. They're learning all these cool new words from a spider talking to a little piggy. I think it's awesome.
I think that's very interesting as well, how you can sort of hear where the spider is obviously more learned when they're speaking, but then you hear the voice of Wilbur and it's more childlike. And
Yeah.
But
Well,
the
he's supposed
difference
to
in
be
the
a baby,
language,
he's a piglet. But the other animals are, the horse has a very strong voice and is able to speak well. The sheep are not as clever, kind of thing, with the words that they use. It's interesting, yeah. Just remembering the plot there where Charlotte is trying to support Wilbur so that he doesn't die, and decides to write the words in the web. The word choices are the first thing that she's written in there is some pig. Then she writes terrific, radiant, and finally humble. Beautiful words.
good word.
And you have to, if you haven't already read it, you have to go, well, even if you have, go back and read it again. It's awesome. To remind yourself on how she comes upon these words when she's pondering, what can I put up next? What would be the best word? And there's some really cool other little characters in there that help her to find these excellent words to save Wilbur. And I did find this beautiful quote from the novel. It's, "You have been my friend. That in itself is a tremendous thing." Just lovely.
Very nice.
It's a really nice story.
How
I
can
like
that be
it.
on a band list? How heartwarming is that story?
Oh, well, but like I said, it's people saying that they think it might be better suited to slightly older audiences rather than the youngins because of those themes. But that's up to parents to decide. So
Exactly.
if you want to read it to your kids, go for it. That's your right. Rightio. So, side note, because we're talking about awesome pigs, I then had a little think about, what about Babe? Babe was awesome.
Oh, I thought that was the other movie that you were talking about.
No, Charlotte's Web did have a film that was 2006. They shot it in Australia. And then Babe, an Aussie film from 1995, shot over in the land of Oz. Some fun facts about Babe. 48 piglets were used to portray Babe and one animatronic piglet as well. They shot it over 3 years, right? So piglets, they grow really quickly. So in all these scenes, Babe's supposed to be a certain size. And that is, it's not going to last with just one pig over 3 years because you're going to get to a very large animal at the end of it. So lots and lots of little piglets, all females. And 3 weeks at a time before they would be too big for the shots and have to go to a younger, smaller piglet. They also had 9 dogs trained to play Fly, the puppy dog who acts as Babe's bestie/mum. And they had 56 animal trainers on set to handle nearly 1,000 different animals when they were filming
Amazing.
Babe. Yeah. Some favourite quotes from that one are you've got "Come Pig," "Away to me Pig," and "That'll do Pig," which we say often, and the adaptation of "That'll do Donkey."
Yeah. That'll do, donkey. That'll do.
Shrek made that one.
Yeah.
A lovely famous one.
I wonder
for
if
us.
it was just that'll do pig, to that'll do donkey.
Of course it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a nod to
yeah.
something else that was beautiful from 1995. So I loved that. Right. Salutations.
Salutations.
Farewell.
Farewell.
Adieu.
And
So long. That was fun.
Until next time.
Yeah. God bless and peace out.
That'll do, pig. That'll do.
This content is for informational purposes only and should not be considered as professional advice. We are not scholars, spiders, pigs, pastors, or politicians. You are not more likely to suck less or try harder having listened to these shenanigans.